Good morning, welcome to CATEX TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. Today is Wednesday, June 24th, 2015. If you want to follow us on Twitter, go to CATEX TV. In Europe, the European finance ministers and the International Monetary Fund are still examining the Greek proposal. They're pushing back a little bit because some of the proposed terms include tax increases on business, which the EU and the IMF believe could in fact stifle commerce. Meanwhile, in Athens itself, the Greek political party that's represented by the Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, is in open revolt against the plan. So this has still got a ways to go. We're going to have to wait and see. The severe weather that pounded the Midwest and spawned tornadoes out there earlier this week hit the U.S. East Coast last night. About 400,000 people in New Jersey and Pennsylvania remain without electricity right now. There have been numerous reports of tornadoes that touched down in South Jersey and also in Pennsylvania. In parts of South Jersey, it's expected that the power is going to remain out for about 10 days. Rail service and commuter service was disrupted this morning throughout the Philadelphia metropolitan area. Meanwhile, the Italian investment company Exor has again hit back at statements from PartnerRe's board, adding that so far it's received quite a positive response for its offer to assume control of the company. PartnerRe's board, as you will recall, had announced earlier this year that it wanted to merge with Axis. PartnerRe recently released a shareholder presentation condemning Exor's inferior offer, criticizing its unacceptable risk. Meanwhile, Exor is involved now in its second week of meetings with PartnerRe analysts and investors, and it said thus far there's been a positive response to its offer, and certainly an agreement that its offer of a $137.50 per share all-cash binding offer is superior. It's also interesting to remember that PartnerRe's largest shareholder continues to remain Exor with 9.3% of the stock. The Iranian supreme leader has hardened his stance on the nuclear negotiations with world powers. The deadline for the comprehensive agreement is at the end of June. In a speech last night, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei insisted Iran would only dismantle its nuclear infrastructure if economic sanctions were lifted first. He also ruled out a freeze on research and development for 10 years, as well as on-site inspections of military sites. This will, of course, throw a gigantic monkey wrench into the discussions between Secretary of State Kerry and the Iranians, probably actually scuttling the deal. XL Catlin Chief Experience Officer, meaning underwriting experience, Paul Jardine said that the reinsurance industry is currently facing a perfect storm, but that Lloyd's and the London market are going to be able to reinvent itself. He said that the traditional industry was facing multiple challenges from alternative capital, low interest rates, big data, inappropriate regulation, as well as general geopolitical uncertainty. Quote, "You name it, we've got it. The perfect storm has arrived." He did say that he believes that Lloyd's and the London market would be able to survive and thrive. He expressed the urgency on innovating in order to maintain that clients increasingly knew more about their risk and risk management than reinsurers ever could. That's oddly not the case right now. He said the industry has to drive business efficiency to make it easier and cheaper for insurers and brokers to deal with the market. He said, quote, "I really don't understand why in the modern world I still receive funds from the client via a broker and I still pay my claims to the client via a broker." Speaking of broker, CATEX, which is a Cypriot-based broker which has operations mainly in Lebanon, announced that it had obtained registration approval as a broker in the Lloyd's market. The fast-growing company, which was founded only about 12 years ago by Fareed Chadid, is on a tear, and we congratulate them. We know Fareed well. About 1,000 residents of a Shanghai suburb protested yesterday over a report that a petrochemical plant may be moved into their neighborhood. Protests reflected growing public concern about the environmental impact of projects like petrochemical plants, as well as the public's deep distrust of local governments. These kinds of demonstrations are unheard of when you think back to 20 or 30 years ago. They just simply never would have happened. The district government issued a statement saying that the plant would be properly managed, so you can be sure that there will be more demonstrations. Last year, insurance industry veteran Brian Duperreault released a virtual manifesto in a speech down in Bermuda complaining about the gender inequality gap in insurance and reinsurance. He said in a speech yesterday that unintentional discrimination continues to hold back women in the insurance industry. He said a year later, he said that little had changed. He said, I think people in my generation believe generally that the right policies and procedures are in place to counteract bias and discrimination, but clearly this is not the case. He said, while there are impressive women in the C-suite, meaning chief executive officers, chief financial officers, and like, and around board tables, their numbers don't begin to reflect the reality of the world's demographics. Quote, we penalize women who take a break from their careers to bear, birth, and raise our children. We judge their intuition and empathy as less than, and a male's overconfidence and assertiveness as more than. We default to the familiar when choosing our management teams, still white, male, and conservative, in spite of a rapidly diversifying world. You really have to hand it to Brian Duperreault. You really do. Touche, good luck, and if you ever need a forum here to help propound that belief and those statements, you've got it. That's the news for today. If we have any breaking news, we'll come back and tell you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.